Hello and welcome back to Super Wall Jump, a video games podcast where I talk to content creators and video game developers and everything in between. With me today, I have Jonathan King, the creator of NodeBreach. Say hi, Jonathan.
Hi, how's it going, everyone?
So, Jonathan, who are you and what do you do?
So I'm Jonathan King. I am a stay-at-home infrastructure solutions architect by day and cybersecurity connoisseur of jack of all trades by night. So that's really the grounding of NodeBreach really kind of comes from my experience in everything when it comes to IT.
Fantastic. What is NodeBreach for people that did not immediately pop open Google and look it up?
Yeah, so NodeBreach is it's my way of trying to gamify cybersecurity. So it is a combination of Magic the Gathering with some elements of Risk, the board game Risk, and cybersecurity built in. So the purpose of NodeBreach is to get you to create computers, is to get you to examine how to scan them, and then basically how to identify what it looks like when somebody is attacking you, and the certain measures and mitigations that you can take to kind of resolve those. So it's really meant to for as an educational tool is the purpose of NodeBreach.
Yeah, and the way that you play, I imagine, is you compete over specific resources, right? Like, for example, a hospital, energy infrastructure. I know that you could theoretically take over countries, quote unquote, in the game.
Absolutely. So in the game, each country has a representative network that you can be part of. So right now, there are 196 countries, so there are 196 networks that are in NodeBreach. Nodes are created on each network, and there are two ways that you're able to kind of interact within the environment itself. So you can scan networks and find nodes. Once you find these nodes, you can then go through and attempt to perform some capture the flag instances where you can try to scan them. You can try to basically hack into them and gain root cause into them, gain root into them. The other way that you can interact with nodes here is once you scan them and identify them on your network, you can then launch a card battle into them. The purpose of a card battle is you're trying to conquer the node. So when you launch a battle, you are basically you're saying, hey, I'm going to take over this node, and there's nothing you can do about it. And the other person is going to sit there and be like, okay, well, give me your best shot. And it's basically when you launch an attack against someone, there are different scenarios that you can choose. And then when you launch that scenario and send your first volley, which is basically like scan your node or scan a network or perform a certain task, the defender then receives a notification of what that person would typically receive in that environment. So say, for example, the attacker launches a network scan and is attempting to discover your open ports. The defender would, on their turn, would see something to the effect of, hey, you're getting scanned. You can then, as part of your defense to that, you can launch something to say, turn off headers, or you can launch a defense against that. When the defense goes against the attack, what gets measured is the attack and the defense on each, basically. So each attack has an attack and defense. Each defense has an attack and defense. So in traditional Magic the Gathering elements, the attack element of the attacker would go against the defense of the defense card. And what I do here is I add in it's a random number generator, which the random number generator attempts to account for chance. So in a real world, you can do everything right. You can launch your defenses, you can make sure everything's updated, you can make sure that everything is logged and everything, but an attacker is still going to get through. There's still going to be something that life is going to happen, that you're going to overstep. the attacker will find it and get through. So that's what that random number character kind of represents. So after the attack and the defense kind of resolves, the attack points are placed. Either the attacker lands the attack points, or the defender kind of defends it and kind of lands the counterpoints. However, that reconciles when it gets through the various phases. At the end, if the attacker gets the defender down to 0, they then, quote unquote, they conquer their node. So when you conquer a node, basically that node then becomes under your control. So you then control that node. It shifts, the ownership of that node shifts over to you, and the person who did own it no longer owns it anymore. They have to go through and create a new node and try to go back in.
But
If
now
that does happen,
you have to defend that node.
yes. So then this accomplishes yes, that user then has to defend that node, but that node that you conquer then becomes the that's your placeholder on that network. So when you first start and you run your first scan, there's only a certain number of networks, the vicinity of your country, that you're going to be able to scan. As you're scanning these networks and you find nodes that are on these networks and you eventually capture those nodes, that becomes your footprint on those networks, and then your fog of war then expands further and you're able to scan more. So as you go through conquering nodes, that's your way of essentially gaining footholds on different countries. And so that's why you then would want to defend that node against other people who would want to attack it, because if you lose that node, you lose that foothold in that country. So then you kind of go backwards a little bit.
Makes sense. So you can have a very good sort of push and pull, because even if you capture a node on a network, someone can then fight it back from you. So you have to sort of pick and choose your battles.
Exactly. Or if you lose a node, you can then launch a contract, and try to get that node back. So you can launch a contract on someone. If somebody gets it, they can try to find the node that you lost, and then they can try to attack it, and then they can get a reward of points if they're able to basically get it back for you. So that's another element in the game that I've kind of coded in.
Yeah. So why make the game about cybersecurity, like, in particular? Was it just, hey, I have knowledge in this area, and so I will make a game about the knowledge that I have?
Yeah, no, I mean, I'm a geek gamer by heart, and I'm also I was going through a master's in cybersecurity at the time, and part of it was to come up with a final project. So I kind of came up with the idea. I didn't have it NodeBreach name at the time. It was more of the idea, and it was at the time it was strictly a card-based environment. It was really kind of striking on, holding on closely to the Magic the Gathering kind of elements. And then as I was, in the age of AI, I did kind of use some resources when it comes to that. Being a developer on the side, I kind of consider myself a jack of all trades, master of none. So there's been a lot of times when I've developed things. I actually taught myself web development when I was 12 years old, and I made my first step-by-step walkthrough of GoldenEye 64. So I kind of started there with development, and I've always kind of been one of those people who have always kind of taught myself, which is why the web development has always been a thing that's been on the side. And after I got my cybersecurity degree was really at the beginning of AI kind of emerging, especially the AI for GitHub or something like that, when it's was talking about the actual coding. um what I eventually ended up doing, however, was taking AI and using the known coding concepts that I had already picked up along the way. So object-oriented coding, or object-oriented programming, working with frameworks such as Laravel or React and things like that, and really kind of using that as the rails to kind of guide the AI LLMs when I was having them help me, because it was just me that built this out. When I really tried to add in
Mhm.
all of the elements there. um, I would create, test-driven deployment when I would create the NodeBreach platform, and it really kind of gave me the tools to securely grow it and build it in
Mhm.
a way that would teach people. And the reason why cybersecurity, yeah, is because it was a cybersecurity course. I'm passionate about cybersecurity, and I'm passionate about teaching. And at the time, I was an IT director, so I would, regularly teach people at the my place of employment when it comes to like information security. And I really kind of felt it was a nice way to kind of mend or merge the two areas together. So NodeBreach really has, it's not just a gaming platform, but it's also meant as an educational platform as well. So there are different elements of it that
Mhm.
can appeal specifically to law enforcement. It can appeal specifically to federal engagements. It can appeal specifically for things such as hospitals with HIPAA, or credit card companies with PCI compliance. So there's a litany of things that NodeBridge, as I was developing it out, I was finding that there was just these natural off ramps to other elements that, hey, you know what, let's add in this, let's add in that, like let's add in NodeBreach University and kind of build in and also an educational workflow as well for users who, yeah, it's point and click, but if you want some sort of educational element underneath that as well, there's also that lab element that's built in as well.
And you mentioned that it is a sort of card-based game, so I imagine the different cards are the different kinds of techniques that you can use when either attacking or defending.
Yes.
I know
Yep.
that I know that cybersecurity is probably a bit more complicated than that,
Mhm.
but that way it's easy to be like, all right, cool. Well, I'm gonna use a DDoS card, right?
Essentially, it's
That's the
essentially
one
like that.
cybersecurity thing. That's the one cybersecurity thing that I know. I know a DDoS, and I know that you can SSH into things, and that's really about it.
Mhm.
Um, I know that me and most other people like me know basically nothing about cybersecurity. So, is this a good platform for us to learn some of the basics?
It is, because I used my wife as a guinea pig when it came to certain elements, and I would kind of sit her and I would watch her, you know, but give her a platform and watch her log in. And yeah, there was a lot of things where she just didn't know what to do. So that was also a driving element for me as well, to a big emphasis that I wanted to have with Node Breach is that users of all skill types would be able to use it. So you could have someone that is a
Mhm.
novice person come in, and I built in a lot of hand holding elements. So like, this is your dashboard. This is what a node is. This is what a virtual machine is. So like you can have the step-by-step walkthrough of a wizard kind of helping you along the way. Or if you're more of an advanced person, there's a straight command line tool that you can just hop right into and just directly create nodes in the command line, and then scan directly from there. So that's a very good point. So one thing I did try to balance is that for beginners, and even for I tried to also make it playable on mobile as well. So for like beginners, or there's also a lot of point and click as well. So and on the mobile you'll have access to a full machine, but it'll be point and click. So that's really the what I feel kind of separates Node Breach, is that you're given a machine, and unlike other platforms that are like, okay, here's your machine or one other machine that's kind of isolated in nature. You're given a machine that's okay. This is your network that you're on. Your network is based on your home country origin address, and then you have like a fog of war almost. So your computer, you're on a network. You can, if you know how to run scans, you can run scans. You can, have something that'll guide you through. But as you begin to find and scan other nodes, really the premise of node breach is to find vulnerabilities. Is to, okay, let me see if I can scan something. Let me see if I can, log into a database. Let me see if I can find an open port or something like that. And then the purpose is to attempt to capture flags. So I have a flag injection system where there are flags that are unique and everything like that. So you attempt to gather flags. And that's kind of one of the two interactive points when you find another node, is that you can either you can start scanning their node. You can begin to find vulnerabilities and start capturing flags. As you capture flags, that reduces the health of the node, and then you can then choose to enter into a card battle at that point, or you can scan a node, find a node that's on the network, and then just scan, and then you just enter a card battle directly then. So the other user has an option to not accept the card battle. If they get into the card battle, then yeah, it is, you have your basic tool cards that you can play.
Mhm.
There are various scenarios that you're essentially looking to accomplish. So the scenarios can be, you're looking to gain a foothold onto you're looking to gain, root access, or you're looking to get a specific flag. It's all kind of driven in the scenario that you choose. And once you get into the battle, then the defender chooses their cards. They have their deck that is aligned to their node, which then they use to, it becomes their that's their stance. So let me back up a little bit. So you have the decks which get tied to nodes, and the decks are um the decks are your roles. So the decks are your roles, where you can either be um a security analysis, you can be corporate IT, you can be a threat analysis, threat actor, or what have you. And these decks are then tied to that node, which would then have the attack and defense kind of cards built in that are associated with that role typically. And then the users, you would get into the battle. Certain cards are able to affect damage to the other user. The other users, depending on the skill level, that there's certain points that users are able to collect and to be able to battle. And I'm sorry, I'm getting lost in the details right now. This is my first time explaining it.
You are
I should,
okay.
okay, all right,
That is
okay,
why. That is why I prepped a list of questions in advance.
outstanding.
Um,
So let me have you
so you
direct to that.
mentioned that you designed this. um, so you mentioned that this is a browser-based game, but you also mentioned that you designed it for mobile. So was it challenging to develop for two very different platforms? Because I know that
Um,
like if you're on browser on mobile, it's still using a browser, but the way you interact with it is completely different.
Yeah, so designing for mobile first here there was definitely a lot of elements I needed to cut out. So like, the users wouldn't have the
Mm-hmm.
direct access to things like having a computer, like when you're in a browser, you're given a node, you're given a virtual computer. It is an actual computer. You can open up
Mm-hmm.
the desktop, you can open up the browser. Obviously, you can't browse the web, but you are able to
Mm-hmm.
go through and perform and function on it like it is a normal computer. This is not something you would have access to on a mobile. You would have the point and click functionality to be able to, to say you wanted to run a certain tool, then it would come up with a window for you to kind of enter in. So, and then you would hit run, and then it would run those options on the node, and then it would give you back the results of that. The system would automatically, so say you found ports that are open, for example, or you found, a service version. The system NodeBreach would automatically, pick up the fact that you identified that, and then it would load that in, it would load that into the system, so that if you could then progress to the next section in the pipeline. So everything has a pipeline that you can kind of filter your nodes through on the dashboard. So when you first create an account, you log in, you create a node, and then you begin scanning. That's the beginning part of your pipeline. So when you scan and you find a node, that's your reconnaissance phase. So you find a node, it goes into the beginning or part of your pipeline, and then you begin, scanning against that node that are tools specific for the reconnaissance phase. So that's where you're going to find your mass scan, your nmaps, your things like that that are going to try to find the initial parts, and then once it finds the the information on a particular node, it automatically shifts that node into a different part of the pipeline where you then have different tools that are available to you to then attack with that node. So again, so that's kind of the one of the two
Makes
elements
sense.
that you can interact with other people, and the other way is, once you scan, you can then just
Hmm.
obviously launch that card back.
So how does it work if one person, like, say you are in a battle for a node and you attack and the person who's in charge of that node is not online? Is there an auto battle or do you just take it?
No, yeah. So typically, when users are logged in, that's when their nodes will start up, and then when they log out, their nodes will turn off. There is an auto. So when you initiate, say if you log in, you walk away, for instance, yeah, there is an auto timeout feature,
Mhm.
where to make it fair, yeah, it will just time out, and there will be no battle that'll be initiated at that point in time.
Makes sense. But this game is about trying to sort of conquer the world in a real way, right? Um, what is there in place to stop someone from taking over a country, for instance, in the game, and then just logging out? And then, if they're logged out, you can't attack their nodes.
Yeah, so there are definitely precautions and security measures that I've built in. Users, obviously they wouldn't have the ability to scan the nodes or to scan the outside world from NodeBreach. But the purpose of NodeBreach, yeah, you're never able to fully take over a country because countries will not only have user nodes, but there'll also be I have bots
Mm-hmm.
that are running inside. The bots act like persistent threats like you would find on the internet today. There's also infrastructure nodes, so these simulate things like um, you know power plants, ISPs, electrical grids, things like that, that you can then go through and scan as well. So these there are always going to be, so the network isn't always reliant on other people being in it. I tried to develop it so that there is always that underlying infrastructure that you always find in the internet in general.
But yes, to recap, basically there are autonomous bots inside of the game, so that way that will prevent people from just sort of camping certain nodes, right?
That's correct. That's correct. Yep. And I built in certain precautions as well so that, users can't just, automatically just constantly spam a certain script or something like that and try to get numerous points from the same thing. So there are, if you try to scan or try to perform the same function after a certain while, the points just reduce to nothing. So really trying to make it fair and balanced
Mm-hmm.
in the game as much as possible.
What got you into cybersecurity in the first place?
So I've always enjoyed it. I've always enjoyed technology in general. Like I said, I first taught myself HTML when I was 12 years old. It moved on to computer hardware from there, and as I got older, I was going to school for an MBA actually. Excuse me. And at the
Mm-hmm.
time, I was working for a managed service provider in Portland, Maine, and while I was working there was somebody that was sitting next to me who said, he was getting frustrated because, he's like, oh, the admin account that I'm using to log into this client server, it keeps getting locked. So, he would log in with the backup credential. He'd unlock the primary one. He'd go to log in with the primary one, and it'd be frozen again. It'd be locked up again. So out of curiosity, I asked him, which client it was, and I popped it in. I entered in their environment, and because I happen to know a lot about the underlying infrastructure, commands at the time. I ran a couple commands against the Active Directory and discovered that the computer name that was signing out, or that was freezing the account, was a Slavic name. And that's very confusing when you consider we were logging into a client in Maine. So come to find out, I had stumbled upon an active breach. Somebody was actively trying to breach this client, and so we found out the server that was coming from, and we went back and we turned off the connection, and bam, threat resolved. But that really kind of that wet my tongue, so to speak, in getting into cybersecurity. And the next week, I switched my degree from MBA to Masters in Cyber.
Makes sense. So that's a reason you would want to know about cybersecurity and that sort of thing, is to protect your infrastructure, right?
Absolutely. Yep.
There are people that want to be able to access your computer, because if they can access your computer remotely, they can do all kinds of terrible things.
Yes.
I know that you've mentioned that in your game you have stuff like hospitals, and I feel like that's important because listeners may have heard of ransomware attacks, wherein, people with bad intentions will hack into hospital like computer infrastructure and basically shut it down unless they get paid like millions of dollars in Bitcoin.
Yeah.
When people's lives on the line, you don't really have the time to, have qualms about all that. It's like, well, we can either try and quibble about this or lose all of our patient records for the year, which you don't want to do.
Absolutely.
And thus, that's why you need cybersecurity.
Right. And that's why another reason why I feel is NodeBreach is it puts the user again in the defender seat. Yeah, so how to kind of respond to something like that, but it also helps you when you see certain indicators of compromise as an end user after playing this game. Then you're like, oh, wait a minute, I've seen this before there, and that meant that. That's kind of, I'm hoping the takeaway is really kind of giving people that real world experience where you wouldn't normally have or be able to get that experience, in another way.
Yes, you've gamified it so that way people can understand, yes, these are things that I should be looking out for. Hey, I don't need to learn all of the particulars for cybersecurity, but this way I can know enough to be like, all right, cool, I need to hire a professional.
Yes.
It's sort of like, with home repair or something, right? Hey, I know enough to know when I need to call someone else. Oh, leaky faucet, I might be able to fix that. Hey, I'm getting mold somewhere in my house. That's something I need a professional for.
Yep, absolutely.
Knowing how much you know is important. And I can guarantee you, again, there are many people out there that do not really think about cybersecurity in a tactile way. Because a good example for me is, oh, hey, yeah, I have all my passwords. Everything's password protected. Why should I worry about cybersecurity?
Right.
But having passwords on stuff is not enough to protect you, right?
No, it is not. And that's where, the new day and age is, having a secondary factor authentication is really critical. Absolutely. Having that secondary device on you to say, hey, yeah, this is me, or hey, yeah, this isn't me, is super critical, because you'll have people that will, even if they try to get your password, they'll try to log in, and you will never know, because any incoming, say they log into your email, if you don't have a secondary form of password on your email, the first thing they'll do is they'll set up rules that'll automatically send any incoming emails to your trash. So anybody who's questioning, maybe, hey, this doesn't look right, you'll never see that, because it's all going to be going to your trash.
So in other words, two-factor authentication is the name of the game these days, simply because it's much harder to spoof having another phone. If they want to access your stuff, they have to access multiple devices.
Absolutely. I recommend, if anything, Microsoft recently has actually been doing away with passwords. So if you have a Microsoft account, and you have the authenticator set up on your phone, you can actually do away with a
Mhm.
password altogether, and all the authentication requests come to your phone for everything. That's just another
Continue.
way. That's just another way that it's something that is physically on you, because a lot of the authentication methods nowadays have biometric security. So it is your face, it is your ID, it is something that is you. So by removing the password, you're removing something that isn't you, something that you've chosen, and replace it instead with something that is
Mhm.
physically you.
Yes, because while we would all love to believe that passwords protect stuff, at the end of the day, I think everyone out there has reused a password once, and pretty much every major site at this point has been hacked at some point in time. So there is a list of passwords and emails and stuff just out there, basically no matter which like internet service you've used.
Yep, yep. There's actually, so on with NodeBreach, obviously it would take up a considerable amount of space to have to basically reinstall the tools and things multiple times on multiple systems on the same device. So the way that I've gotten around that is there's a share or a drive that's mounted on everybody's device that's read only, and it has all the tools that everybody needs to be able to access whatever they need to access. But on this drive as well is a what's it's commonly referred to as the RockU list, but the RockU.txt, it's RockYou.txt. It is a file that is multiple gigs in size, and it's every single password combination. It's used primarily for brute forcing, but it goes through and it tries every single password combination. Passwords are really the weakest link when it comes to authentication.
And again, that is news to me because I grew up with, all right, cool, remember your passwords, make sure that you like have everything written down, have a different password for each one. So you're telling me now that that's not really useful anymore because, well, computers have gotten faster, I guess?
It really
Or is
has.
it also just, hey, yeah.
Computers have gotten faster. AI has gotten smarter. So it's smarter to use AI. It's easier to create an AI generated program that says, hey, go through and iterate over a list of a password X characters long. Pull from this character list, that character list, and you could, theoretically, yeah, you could technically outsource this process to a Google, quantum computing program to go through and just run any possible sequence of password to try to crack it. So, granted, yeah, that might be on a fringe level of things, being able to outsource computationally like that, but we're rapidly moving towards that's not so much of a fringe.
Yeah. So AI then has made cybersecurity work harder?
Yeah, you could say that, but cybersecurity, I feel, has always been cyclical. So whenever there's, say for example, the heartbleed bug, or any other cybersecurity breach or bug that's been identified, is that you'll have people, you'll have something that's been identified, and then all of a sudden everybody becomes very cybersecurity conscious, and they go up and they reevaluate their tools, and they make sure everything's up to date, and then everything really kind of goes by the wayside. When you have AI, I mean, look at there's on HackerOne, for instance, which is a bug bounty program for cybersecurity people. So basically, companies they
Mhm.
sign up on bug bounty programs to say, hey, it's okay for you to hack our stuff. This is the rules that you are allowed to do. This is what you can't do. If you don't abide by these rules, then we will hold you liable. But as long as you hold by the rules, then you're fine. If you find any bugs, send it here, we'll pay you. That's a rather popular programs that companies do. Tesla is known, they have one of the most popular bug bounty programs because it's literally like, hey, any Tesla asset in the world is within this program. So if you find any bug, any vulnerability, report it to us, and we'll ensure you get paid. And I've seen things, PayPal on there. Really Fortune 50 companies are on bug bounties. And last year, somebody created an AI bot to go through and start participating in these bug bounty programs. And I think it was like within a week, that bot went to number one on the leaderboard for HackerOne. So it's in that case, it's good because you're able to use AI in a defensive measure. Um, but that also means that you have AI that's very much capable of doing the opposite.
Yeah, if someone's like, all right, cool, I had AI write this program to crack people's security, anyone could theoretically go and remake that same program. It's not just a matter of, okay, cool, hey, Doug from Indiana made this program that's good at cracking stuff. It's, all right, cool, Claude can help anyone crack software and infrastructure at any level. And that's much harder to defend against.
Yes. Yeah, especially because you have Claude Claude, Grok, Gemini. I mean, these all have
Mhm.
coding plugins, so you can very easily, punch them into something to a code editor. You can link up the AI to it, and then you can have it. Yeah, you can have it spit out Python scripts in a matter of minutes. So it's really easy to do, and especially with AI, it's you may have seen some of the more comical ones, like, hey, enter in your password here and we'll see if anybody has ever used it, like, kind of comical uses of vibe coding like that. But it's really it's the people that are able to say, hey, find a way to get into this get into this website. The AI program
Yeah.
that won't create anything that would respect um rate limits, for example, or especially out of the box, and that wouldn't have anything. So like there,
Mhm.
you could actually do a lot more damage when it comes to creating some of these scripts, especially when you have new beginners that are trying to enter the workforce, not really knowing how they're using AI. So that's really kind of
Mhm.
one of those people are adver adversaries to kind of look out for. Is you have the unintentional people as well, where people who are simply
Mhm.
trying to learn, but um, do more damage as a result.
Yeah. I will say I had never heard of bug bounties before, and that honestly, I want to do a whole episode now just on bug bounties because that as a program and as an institution sounds crazy. Hey, I'm the Bank of Nova Scotia. Please try and crack my security and I'll pay you for it so long as you don't take any money.
hmm I mean, yeah, it's they have to sign on to it. But yeah, it is essentially like
Mhm.
that. Is he, don't do any harm, and this is what you'll do, and prove to us that is an issue. Work with us to ensure that is resolved, and yeah, then
Mhm.
they pay out. Like I've seen PayPal, hand out $15,000 payments before, for verified bugs that people have found in their systems.
That is much more than I was expecting, but also it does track. Because if you have that financial incentive, hey, crack it and don't do anything bad and we'll pay you, you still get to do the thing that, hey, if you're able to crack it and find these bugs, you might have been able to take money anyways, but this way you still get some money and no jail time,
Right. Yep. And
which I
that's very
think,
critical.
yeah, because hey, cool, a lot of people I think would be into that, especially if you have that hacking knowledge. A guaranteed payday is better than maybe payday and also jail.
Yeah. And I can tell you that most companies, most ISPs, as long as you are um, respectful with regards to
Mm.
the speed that you're hitting their infrastructure, like, because a lot of the tools that are out there, like you can control, like, how fast that you're sending a physical request from your computer to their infrastructure. um you know
Mm.
the faster you do that, means the more requests that they have to respond to, and the more that they're responding to you, the less they're responding to legit ones. So if for you could accidentally bring down their website because you're sitting there scanning it at like the fastest that you can go, and that's essentially that's a DDoS. You're denying the service to other people because you're scanning it. So that's and that so those are the types of guidelines that they'll put in there. A lot of them will say, hey, don't send more than 5 requests per second, or any request that you send has to have your name or your handle in the request, so that way we can track it. So it's all black and white, but as long as you adhere by the rules, yeah, it is a perfectly fine. You don't need to mask yourself at all. There are some of the top performing hackers on these websites. They've never installed a VPN in their life. It's as long as you're respectful and just doing what you need to do, yeah, there's no issue with this whatsoever.
Fantastic. And again, to bring it back to your game, NodeBreach, DDoS is probably one of those attacking things you can do to a site, right?
Yeah.
To a
So,
node.
and that's a DDoS is one of those abilities that it's really difficult to replicate in a gaming environment where you have the actual like a DDoS effect. So that's actually just
Mm.
to let you know there. So with the DDoS, that's an effect that you can use, that you can call upon. So um, it's like a meter that you build up. So when you do so many
Mm.
successful card plays, that DDoS meter will build up. And then once it's full,
Mm.
you go ahead and you hit launch. When you launch the DDoS, that basically the attacks that the person that you're launching the DDoS against, their attacks are no longer as
Mm.
successful, and your attacks on them are more severe for like the next 2 or 3 turns. So like that's an example of trying to balance the real world, elements
Mm.
of cybersecurity with the simulated environment that is node breach.
So, how would one defend against a DDoS attack, first in real life and then in the game? Because, from what I understand about internet protocol, when you go to a website, it is sort of like going up to a store counter and you're saying, hey, I would like 1 packet of information, please. And a DDoS is like, what if you went into one store 5,000 times in a minute and were like, I would like 1 packet, please? Imagine 300 people storming your local McDonald's and
Mhm.
all of them asking for a burger. The McDonald's is going to shut down because they cannot handle that many people at once. And that is essentially what a DDoS attack is. So how would, you know, you defend against something like that?
Yeah. So in a real world situation, when you're on a DDoS, the options are really limited to you when it comes,
Mm.
unless you plan for it ahead of time. So, and I say that because there are companies that have basically made their entire livelihood protection against large attacks like that, like Cloudflare. Cloudflare has
Mhm.
specific things that are in place. I'm not too sure as to the exact way that they can mitigate it, but I'm assuming it has something to do with the fact that they're
Mhm.
able to like dynamically change the address of the server or something like that, so that your server is still kind of kept up while others are kind of using that old cache. But if you don't take the precautions ahead of time, then yeah, it's you're there and you're at the will of that attack. And as the DDoS infrastructure matures, so do the operators who then have DDoS as a service, where you can
Mhm.
go to a certain website on the darknet and you can say, hey, I want to launch an attack against the website. I want to bring it down for 3 hours. You can pay it, and they just basically turn on a spigot, and they just launch it at that site for a certain amount of time. And it's stuff that
Yeah.
you
I
can
know
order.
that you can Yeah. I know that theoretically, like, in order if you want to prevent it from one particular source, you could theoretically like be like, all right, cool. From this IP address, I'm limiting it to like again 5 requests a second or something. But something that I have heard of, you can tell me that if I'm completely wrong, but people can get bot farms and stuff. So
Mhm.
that way it's a bunch of different IPs all flooding it. So if we're using the McDonald's analogy, and it's like, all right, cool. Lawson is only allowed to order one burger a day. But you get around that by being, okay, cool, well, now there's 300 different people. Instead of one guy ordering 300 burgers, you have 300 different people ordering one burger. And that has the same effect.
Yeah, that's called a distributed denial service, where it is distributed amongst a large
Mm-hmm.
number of nodes. And to use your analogy, in 2026, it would
Mm-hmm.
not just be 300 people in there ordering one burger. It would also be the internet connected, light bulbs and thermostats and everything that is internet connected nowadays that has next to no security built in. A lot of times these devices all have a default username and password that you can use, and once you're in, um, it basically gets converted into a node in or a zombie in this bot farm. So you have the DDoS, the sizes of the DDoS attacks are in the terabytes per second, and only getting stronger.
So you're telling me that if I have smart light bulbs in my house, a hacker could theoretically use my smart light bulbs as part of a bot network?
Yes. Yep. You can have all of your internet connected devices part of a bot network, and you would have no idea. And all they would be doing is just sending one-off packets to a certain server that a command and control server is telling them to communicate with. The
That I mean,
problem,
on the one hand, that's really cool. On the other hand, that's terrifying that someone could just be like, "All right, cool. I'm going to go into your home and everything that's connected to the internet that you don't think about. I'm just going to make it a part of my network."
yeah, yep, Internet of Things. And the problem is that not only did these manufacturers, construct these devices with these built-in credentials, but they didn't. They neither did they create a mechanism to update them in the future. So a lot of these devices that are out there in the wild, they will never have the option of having that username and password be changed.
You mean that I'm not gonna be able to update the software on my light bulb? Whoa! Somehow that is actually somehow I either want to get rid of the light bulbs or make the light bulbs better now.
I
I
know,
now
right?
have an opinion on smart light bulbs. Congratulations.
Hey, you're very welcome. And that is the wonder of NodeBreach. Is really just trying to
Mhm.
put these conversations in the forefront.
Yeah. And hey, and I'm going to guess that if I have a smart light bulb or something in my home, could you theoretically use that as a jumping off port to get into other stuff on my personal network?
Absolutely. There is actually the password manager. The name of it is escaping my right now, but there's a password manager, a rather popular one, about 8 years ago, give or take, that suffered a breach. The like one of the master passwords to unencrypt everybody's password was discovered. Basically, the way that was
Mm-hmm.
discovered or was he was targeted because of who he was, obviously. So this wouldn't be a normal person, but he was targeted. Somebody found his home IP address and was able to get into, I believe they were able to get into his PC or able to get into his network because of a Plex server that was running that was out of date. Yeah, they were able to get into his network through their Flex server because it was out of date, and they were able to steal that file on that developer's computer. That basically was this massive breach. That personally, for me, I was a paid user of them. I stopped paying because I didn't trust any of the passwords that I had with them.
So, if you're, but okay, so say you're a regular Joe Schmo like me. Well, probably more regular because I know what a VPN is. What does a regular person do aside from burning all electronics in their home in
You
order to
know,
like stay safe?
in digital safety in 2026 is no laughing matter. It's
Mm-hmm.
Robert Mueller back in, rest in peace, back in, I think it was 2012, said there's two kinds of organizations, those that have been hacked and those that are going to be hacked again. And I believe I
Mm-hmm.
might be misquoting, but that's essentially the essence of what he was saying. But there's just that many proliferation of people getting hacked, and really the best way to mitigate it is you have your credit monitoring, obviously, keeping contact of the
Mm-hmm.
certain accounts that you have. I regularly find myself just simply removing and deleting apps from my phone I don't need anymore. Like, there are all these kind of small little one-offs that you can always do, ensuring you have two-factor authentication on anything. Everything pretty much supports two-factor authentication now. You can use the password app on if you have an iPhone. The passwords that's kind of built in there that has a way that you can set up a code with it. So if you're in the Mac environment, like if you go to a website that you've registered a code that transcends across all your Mac devices, for example. So you can just enter in that code from anywhere. So really just trying to be security conscious and setting up the uh, whatever options are available to you, setting them up and taking advantage of them. And that's the best, really kind of best starting point that
Makes
you can have.
Yeah, it's sort of like you're never going to be able to escape from the ordeal of having to get sick. Um People get sick and that's just a thing that happens, but you can do things in your daily life to try and mitigate it. You
Absolutely.
know, hey,
Abs-
make sure that you're getting regular rest, make sure that you wear a mask in public sometimes. Like you That's basically the same thing for cybersecurity. There is no magic bullet. You're going to get sick if you participate in society. Your options are never participate in society or mitigate the risks.
yes, 100%. And that's a lot of times what I always tell people too. When I was an IT director, is I would show them, hey, this is what you're not supposed to do, but inevitably that's going to happen. So now I'm going to teach you
Mm-hmm.
what to do, from the moment that you identify that you've done something wrong until the moment that I can respond. Like, that's the moment that you're on your own. So that's the equivalence of, identifying that there's a fire in your house, calling 911, and then using your fire extinguisher and trying to put out whatever you can. You're just trying to simply mitigate whatever you can, and while while you're trying to be secure.
Makes a lot of sense. But yeah, I guess that makes NodeBreach even more important because I assume that if you play it, you can realize just how many different things can go wrong. Um, on the website it says that there are 300 plus real tools, and DDoS attacks are one tool that
Hmm.
people have. I know you say there's 300 examples on NodeBreach. I imagine that means that there are far more than 300 things people can do to your computer without your consent.
Absolutely. Oh yeah, and that's yeah, and those are just everything that I've had included in here is just the open source. None of this includes the companies that have actually built and regularly maintain and sell licenses for these as well.
I hadn't considered that, of course, there is a financial incentive for people. Oh, hey, do you want to get this super good hacking tool courtesy of Gary, I guess? Gary Incorporated? Yeah, so there's probably also people that are providing tools for people to do hacking with. And then there's the legal liability therein of like, well, we don't control what people use these tools for. We just sell them. I
Yeah,
just sell bullets, officer. I don't control what people do with them.
I mean that's essentially the same defense. Yeah, I mean, it's Rapid 7 is a company that produces a lot of tools like this. A common hacking tool is Metasploit. It's commonly referred to. I was when I was going through my cybersecurity degree, I was taught Metasploit. Metasploit has a lot of that's how you're in a lot of times able to kind of get onto other people's systems is using this tool. This
Mm-hmm.
tool is has the free open source version, but it also has the paid version as well.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, the companies are legit. These are companies, and the purpose of these is for defense. It's the ones that you'll find that have you'll never find a company that is going to say, hey, buy this tool for the purpose of hacking somebody else. It'll be That's
Yeah.
the type of stuff that you'll find on the dark net. So that's the kind
Mm-hmm.
of stuff that people will pay Bitcoin for, because that's why people do Bitcoin, is because it's untraceable. Um, but
Yeah.
when you're talking about an actual like an enterprise defense, yeah, that's where there are some really good programs, but they do cost quite a bit of money.
And understandably, because with the right tools, you could do some very bad things, I
Absolutely.
imagine.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, you when did you release Node Breach? I think in the past few days, right?
Yeah, I haven't even really officially released it, so I'm trying to right now. I have it open to that wait list that you saw. Really just to
Mm-hmm.
kind of to A, gauge interest, but to B, make sure that I don't overutilize my server right now. So everything's locally hosted
Mm-hmm.
right now at my house. I have a server that I have here, and I have it I have it currently balancing the resources, and I have it set up so that it's going to tell me, hey, if I hit certain utilization levels, then that's kind of the trigger
Mm-hmm.
to expand it. But I'm hoping by then I'll have some pretty good feedback from people on what works and what doesn't work. So you can really kind of consider it in the alpha stage at this point.
Makes sense. And you can go sign up to try out Node Breach right now. You can just go to nodebreach.com, right?
That's right. Right there on the CTAs right there to sign up for. Well, I'll get the request and send out the invitation to your email, and you'll get credentials to be able to sign in.
Yeah, you can go learn some stuff about cybersecurity and hopefully learn how to get hacked less.
That's right.
Um, Hopefully never at all, but again, I imagine that's the same thing as hoping that you will never get sick in your life. That's not a thing.
That's not a thing, and it's important to know how to respond when it happens.
And I mean that's all we can do these days.
Yep.
Um but yeah, with that, um I do have a couple more questions. So why make it a browser game as opposed to an app? Like on your phone or like a game for Steam?
Um, so the app is actually I was that's actually planned on the roadmap. At least for the mobile,
Mm.
at least for a mobile app. I do plan on because of the integrations with a lot of the technical aspects. That's why I'm not able to kind of launch
Mm,
it on the Steam base like that. But eventually,
mm,
I do foresee it being packaged and installable on corporate networks
mm,
for the purposes. So if you wanted to have like a training mechanism for annual compliance for example like that, then you can
mm.
have NodeBreach running locally, and you can run your own kind of contests and things like that inside of it.
That could be fun. Uh, Fingers crossed that it takes off.
Yeah, exactly. That's
But
what I'm hoping.
yes. Alrighty. And with that, dear listener, I think that brings us to the end of our show. Is there anything else you'd like to plug before we wrap up?
No, just I hope everybody has a great experience with it, and if there's any feedback that people reach out in any manner that they can, and I'll be happy to look at it and incorporate it where possible.
Fantastic. And as always, listener, thank you so much for listening. And if you'd like to be part of the discussion, feel free to join the Discord, which should be located in the show notes. With that, have a great rest of your day.